Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel again. So we are here with another beautiful editorial from Indian Express dated 13th of August. Okay, so the topic for today's editorial is when my generation can learn from Gen Z and how can we help. So the author is basically a millennial who has learned from Gen Z through its protest and the political incitement that the Gen Z has provoked for the central government to take a massive decision, never the country unprecedented decision the country has never witnessed before. So how can we help? So the author basically telling about the author, he's basically an MP from Rajya Sabha and from party RJD, that is Bihar based party, right? So the author writes, I hope you can see that. Yes, the author writes that the years that the young people devote to preparing for their futures cannot be treated as an expendable. Yes, very important. We do not have ample of time, and also there are eligibility for number of competitive exams, excluding NEET, where the unlimited attempts are available still. It has come out to be one of the most disrupted and corrupted examination conducted by NTA so far. So we move what began as the reclamation of an insult have been transformed into a identity of survival, collective strength and shared belonging. Yes. So the author says that what began as an insult, reclamation to the insult that the CGI CGI Suryakant has commented during one of his proceedings that these youngsters, these Gen Zs are no more but a cockroaches. But although he thereafter he tried to correct himself, he tried to reclaim himself, and I'm only referring to the unemployed and uneducated youths, right? But that has led to the ignition in the hearts of Gen Zs, of the country's Gen Z, who have been suffering for years and who have suppressed their feelings for years against the brutal and inhuman education system that they are prevailing in, leading to lack of jobs, lack of responsibilities and lack of self-reliance. This is not the way how we could become a Viksit Bharat nation, because if the youth, the major population of the country, which accounts for 40%, is not satisfied with what they are now and they will be, that doesn't mean we have reached a level of development. Also, the India holds a very less position in terms of press freedom and also in terms of happy and development index. Happy index, like how many major people of the country are happy staying in India. Although the position are top notched or are taken over by the Scandinavian nations like Finland and Norway, and also in terms of press. The irreverent language asserted that it is not the duty of the citizens to assume the language and manners preferred by those in authority. Yes, what made me especially admire these young protesters is that they have normalized a fundamental democratic principle which I and others have been repeating over and over again. An electoral mandate does not, very important, an electoral mandate does not relieve a government of the duties to answer citizens between elections. Gen Z has shown other citizens that they beyond parliament and election, democracy also lives in campuses, collectives, independent medias, public meetings and peaceful protests. Very important line by the author here. The responsibility of the government does not end when it proposes its manifesto and when it has come into the force, into the power by winning an election. It has to hold itself accountable with every action that take place in the running of the government, in the running of the nation. And also democracy lives in campuses, collectives, independent media, public meetings and peaceful protests. Very important. A peaceful protest is an integral part of democracy and also being guaranteed under the fundamental rights to us citizens, stating that it should not harm the civilian and the normal life. Protest is a right to raise a voice against the odds, to raise a voice against the bads. If we don't confront them, then they would enjoy excessive power, and that would ultimately lead not to a true democracy that this nation aimed at when it got independent back in 1947. Moving further, you could see here, while the resignation of a minister and other commitments they secured from the BJP-led central and state governments are important achievements, the deeper significance of these protests lies in the restoration, the conviction that organized citizens can still make a powerful government answerable. Very, very important. If you want to make the government accountable and answerable for the deeds, for the action that they did, you have to be very important. What? You have to be an organized citizen who raises his voice, not just by the protest, but a peaceful protest, a mass gathering and support for one common cause. And also one more thing, that they raise their voice, they ask, they protest by keeping in mind the laws and the rights they enjoy, and also not violating the rights of other people who are not involved directly into the protest. Very important. So you have to be an organized citizen, and that Gen Z has explicitly shown to the world that how an organized protest, how a peaceful protest can lead to a massive accountability and a massive reformation in terms of government's policy and their functioning. It is now our obligation to remain present when protesters face intimidation, arrest, vilification, and exhaustion, to carry their demands into legislature and to ensure that promises made during the crisis are honored. Very important. Now the author urges his age group, that is millennials, when post-protest, when the country's Gen Z who were part of this massive protest are being detained, are being arrested, or are being scrutinized by the police excesses, they must be secured and they must protect them from the face intimidation, arrests, and exhaustion, and carry their demands into the legislature. Also, in the recent days, we have seen that the Supreme Court has strictly ruled out the government and the police, especially the all state governments and the police of respective states, to revoke and repeal all the FIR that has been written down against the students who are involved in the protest, except those with a previous criminal records. They must be exonerated. And they must be released on an immediate effect unless they have a criminal records in the past history. So that indicates the Supreme Court is also, the Honorable Supreme Court is also strengthening or also helping the Gen Z protesters against the government, against the brutal government and the police brutality and the excesses that have been seen in two protests that have took place in the nation. One is the CJP led Delhi protest, what we call it as Sansad Chalo, and the second one we have seen in Jharkhand, which basically this one was against the NEET discrepancies in exams were conducted, and this was Jharkhand. The Jharkhand protest is against the state PCS examinations, unaccountability and the misconduct performed during the conduct of these state level examinations, which is led by a different group. It has nothing to do with CJP, right? Moving further, whatever organization scores they choose, my most fervent wish is that they preserve the qualities that made this mobilization Powerful Gen Z in India contains profound inequalities, yes, in terms of caste, gender, religion, disabilities, language, region, family, income determine who receives opportunities. Very important. Who can afford repeated attempts, who is heard, and who encounters the harshest repression. A generation movement acquires lasting democratic force when those differences are represented within its concerns. The youth have given us hope. It is now our turn. The author here urges his age groups, his generation, to return the courtesy and not let their hopes be dashed, as a student of Paris declared in May 1916. Soyez réaliste demands l'impossible. Be realistic and demand the impossible. This is French quote by the students' protest in Paris back in 1968. The author requotes here that be realistic and demand the impossible. Everything is possible if you are dedicated to make it come into force. Very beautiful thing. But now I would also like to add that the one line I read somewhere. It's in Hindi and it goes like रुख बदल दो हवाओं का अगर तू उड़ने की ठान ले. मैं रुख बदल दूँ हवाओं का अगर तू उड़ने की ठान ले. मैं लड़ूंगी जब तो बस जीतने की ठान ले. So the Bharat Mata says to every soldier and every nation lover that मैं रुख बदल दूँ हवाओं का अगर तू उड़ने की ठान ले और मैं लड़ूंगी जब तो बस जीतने की ठान ले. Thank you very much everyone for joining me today. It was a nice session talking to you. I hope you enjoyed it and we'll meet in yet another and beautiful editorial tomorrow.